Hi there! In today's video, I will continue my custom content management system project. If you didn't see the previous videos, you can check the links in the description to watch them. But here's a quick recap. So I started with this free solid state template from html5app.net, which looks like this. And then I converted all the elements on this page into PHP classes so that I can dynamically create this page with PHP. So I can create the header and some links for the menu, and then I can render the menu and the banner and these spotlights here, and then the footer links and the form in the footer, and then finally render the footer. After that, I made it so that I can save the elements into the database. So if I go here to my custom CMS database, I have an elements table and a pages table. If I go to the pages table, I have this one page here with the ID 1 and name front page. And when I go to the elements table, here I have all the elements and their JSON representations. So in today's video, I would like to make it so that I can edit all of these elements in place in like a what you see is what you get kind of way. But before we do that, I want to make some improvements to the code, some refactoring. Now the first thing I want to do is that in the element class, I created this abstract function from database, and then I implemented that on all of the elements. But I ended up implementing it the same way in each of these elements. So if I go to the banner, it's the same way here. If I go to footer, again, it's the exact same. And the form is the same. So in fact, I can move this from database method into the element class. So let's do that. So it is no longer going to be an abstract method. It will be an actual method. And I also have this get data from database, which is not necessary anymore because it's basically the same thing. So I will rename this from database, and I will combine these two methods, and I will call this the JSON data. And then here in the save method, where we are saving the element to the database, we are currently only creating new elements. We cannot update existing elements. So we're going to have to get the ID of the element so that we can save it. So I think I should do it here. So instead of returning this from JSON, which will actually return the PHP object from the JSON object, I will say element equals this, and then I will set element set ID to be whatever the ID is. In this case, we are getting the element ID like this. So I will set it to element ID, and then I will return the element. And this I should call JSON data. And I'm not quite sure why we have these quicklys here. It is because I did not implement this in the element class. So I should have it as an abstract function. And now I have to implement this setID method. Alright. And now this will not return a standard class anymore. It will return static, meaning the class whatever the element is. And now I realize this should actually be standard class. So the JSON data is going to be the decoded data already. And now I can go to all of these classes and I can remove the from database method. Great, that is done now. Now we have another method here called getJSON, which I think is the same for each of these elements. So let's check. Yes, it is the same thing. So I can move this in the element class as well. Alright, that is done. What else can we do? Now, one thing that I don't like about this is that I'm having to duplicate these constructor parameters everywhere. So they are in the constructor, then they are in the getters, which that's still okay. But then in the render function, I have to duplicate them here in a little bit of a different way, and here. And then when I get the array, I have to duplicate them here. And then when I get it from JSON, I have to duplicate them here again. So I think I could move the list of all of these constructor properties into another method. And in fact, I think that I can use the ReflectionClass of PHP to get these constructor properties. Now, maybe that goes kind of into the hacky territory, but I would like to know if that is possible. So let me do that. Now, you probably should not do this, but I will do it anyway, just to see how the reflection class works, because I've never used it before. So let me first go to the element class, and I will declare here an abstract public function getProperties, which will return an array of properties. And in fact, this is not abstract, because the point is I can do this in the element class. So this should now get whatever is passed in the constructor of the given class, but not really what is passed in the constructor, rather the parameters, the names of the parameters that are set in the constructor method. So let's Google this. PHP reflection class. So here, the reflection class is something that we can use to get information about a class. So there should be a getConstructor method. So here's how we use this. We set the class to be a new reflection class of this class. So let's do that. Class is new reflection class of this, whatever this is. And then constructor is class getConstructor. And then we should get the properties of the constructor. I think there is a properties. getProperties. Let's see if we can use it this way. Properties will be constructor getProperties. I think I cannot use it this way. Let's make another Google search. PHP reflection class getConstructor property names. Get parameters, that is what I'm looking for. And then what is the format of this? It will be an object that has a get name. Okay, and I will call this parameters. And then I will initialize a list that we will return. And for each of the parameters as parameter, we will say list, add the parameter name to the list. So we say parameter get name. And then we will return the list. And I think I will shorten this a bit by doing this and calling this parameters. So now this should get whatever is passed in the constructor of whatever element we are constructing. So now what we can do is when we have the render method, we can actually loop through that array of properties and then do the replacing. So we can move the render method into the element class. So here, instead of doing this, we will say parameters is this get properties. It's properties or parameters, what is it? Let's say properties. And then for each of the properties as property, we are going to replace that property. So we will say getter will be get property. And then we will say template equals string replace, and we will generate the placeholder, let's call it placeholder, with this getter in the template. And let's make the placeholder. It is going to be this and string to upper property. Now, I don't know if I have to do string to upper, but that's what I used. And I think that looks better in the template. Let's move this on a couple of lines. And now we can remove this. And then, of course, this is not article. This should be template name, and we will set it here. Template name equals string to lower. Now, again, we might just rename the files with the uppercase, just like the class name. But we will say get class this. So now the template name will be dynamic based on which element we are creating. So now we can remove all the render functions from all of the different element classes. But we have one more thing to do, because here we are rendering the array of articles. So we can't just use the getter here. So we have to do this inside of the element class. So how do we do this? let's go back here. Let's do this. Value will be equal to this getter, like this. So we get the value. And then we say if is array value. If the value is an array, then we do this. So let's copy this and paste it here. So value will be now the same as get articles. And we will say value. And let's call this element. And then after this, we'll set the value to the rendered. So if the value of the property is an array, then we loop through the array and render each element in the array. And then here we have to say value. We replace the placeholder with the value, which will either be straight from the getter if it's not an array, but if it is an array, then we will render every element in the array. And we have another if that we have to add, because in the footer we have the form. So we are rendering the form. So we have to change the element class to say else if value instance of element. If the value from the getter is an element, then we render that element. So we will say value equals value render. So that should solve that problem. And now we do have the render links here. And that should be solved with the same thing because it's an array of link objects. So now let's go and remove the render function from all of these element classes and see if this still works. And we can remove the render articles method as well. Now here in the footer link we have a separate render method because I didn't use the template in this one. Perhaps I should change this into a template, but we can override the method in this case. And with the form as well, I didn't use the template, so let's leave this as it is. And the form field is the same. But in the header we can remove this. Alright, and I will remove these use statements from these classes related to the PDO because we don't use the PDO in those classes anymore. Alright, now I think this would be a good time to test that the thing actually works. So let's go to this page again and let's refresh and see what breaks. Everything breaks. So let's see what kind of errors we get. Cannot make non-static method from JSON static in class header. I defined it wrong in the element class. It should be a static function. And I think I will get an error because I annotated the return type here, but not in the elements. So let me add it. Okay, and let's try this again. Refresh, and we still don't get anything. So let's see what we get now. Could not check compatibility between article block from database because class PDO is not available. I have to use this. Maybe I deleted it by accident. No, I don't have to have this in there. I forgot to delete it from there. Okay, let's try this one more time. And we still get nothing. Call to private method get theme from scope element. Well, in fact, this is another stupid thing that I did in the previous video, that I created this get theme method for all of these classes. And of course, I don't need to do this separately, so I will remove it from all of these. And I will add it here, which it doesn't really make any sense. I created this function so that I don't have to hard code the theme, but I'm still hard coding the theme. So I will just move it in here because this element is for this specific theme. So we will figure this out later if we have to. Here I will do the same. And let's see what will happen now. We still have an error. Call to undefined method standard class render. Okay, let's see here. If element instance of standard class, then let's print some debugging information because I'm not sure what is going on here. Let's var dump element. And let's refresh this page. Okay, here's the problem. I didn't create classes from the links in the menu, and now I'm facing this problem. So let's do that. Let's go to the menu class and convert the links into link classes. So I will copy this footer link class and call it menu link. And I will copy here this code for the menu links. And I will paste it in here. And this will have a URL and a text. And we will need to create a new enum for this. So menu link. So let's go to element types and add a new one here. And now I have the wrong data in the database. So I will copy this here and I will do this manually for now. So I will change these links to have a type of 10. So that should work. Let's refresh, and we got rid of that, but we still get some kind of error. And okay, we have a problem here. We are getting the namespace of the class when we call getClass. So that is not going to work. So let's go to element, and can we just use base name? We can't because we are not on Windows. So how do we get the main, just the last part of the class? We can use the reflection class again. Now, I think this is a bit too complicated. I could just use some explode here and get the last part. But let's do this anyway. Okay, so we get the short name from the reflection class of this object. Let's see if this works. Refresh, and still we have an empty page. Call to undefined method standard class. Let's put the var dump here. Okay. Well, we still have it as a standard class. So we have to say if it's a standard class, then we have to convert it into an actual class. So now let's go to the page class, and here we are doing this get element class and then turning it from JSON to the actual element. Now I think I will move this function to the element class, and I will say element get element class, and let's go here and create a new static function. And it will do exactly this. And then let's go back here, and I will actually take this and I will make this method return the fully qualified name of this class. So it's funny, when we want to have the namespace, we don't get the namespace, but then when we don't want the namespace, we get the namespace. So now we can copy this code and add it to the element class. And when we render it, if it's a standard class object, we will get the class of the element, and then we will say that the value will be from JSON of that element. And I can use static here. And let's try and refresh this page. And the page is still empty. But let's see if we move to the next error. We are still calling, I am sorry, it is not value, it is the element. Alright, so now we have some problem here. We are not returning the type. Let's change this code so that it will say if element type value is the element type, then we return this, and otherwise we will throw an exception. No element class found for. Alright, and a semicolon here. So let's try. if we get some exception now. No element class found for URL elements.html text elements. Okay, we have another problem somewhere. I forgot to add the type to all of these, so there's the elements as well. So let's update this in the database and refresh. And it works! Yes! It looks exactly like it did before. That is great. Awesome. So now we have cleaned up these element classes a little bit. But now we also have this getArray method here and this fromJSON method, which also duplicate these constructor parameters. So let's try to fix this. So in fact, I will move this getArray method to the element class. And I will say that array will begin with this getElement type. So we only set the type. And then for each of these getProperties as property, we will say getter equals getProperty and value equals this getter. And if value instance of element, then we say array property equals value getArray. Actually, I will just do this value equals that, and then in the end we will set it to value, and then we will return array. So now when we generate an array of an element, we loop through the properties and we get the value of each property, and if a property is an element, then we get that element's array, and then we return the array. So that should do exactly the same as this did over here. And we have to do this array case as well. So if it's an array, we loop through the array and get all of the elements arrays. Else if is array value, then result will be empty array, and for each of value as item, result will have item get array. And then in the end, value equals to result. I think that should do it. So we can remove this, we can remove this, and we can remove this. Now here I did not create the getters, so I'll do that. And let's move on to the last one, spotlight. And we can remove this as well. And let's see if this still works. Yes, it works. Great. All right, that is amazing. One more optimization or refactoring I want to do is the fromJSON. Now, these again are just the constructor properties. So I will move this into the element class. Now, how do we do this? We have to pass the parameters here based on what the current object's constructor parameters are. So let's get the parameters first. This get properties. Properties equals that. Sorry, I cannot do this because this is a static function and we are creating the object from a standard class. So we have to get the element class first. So class equals static get element class of element. I will call this element. Or let's call it data, whatever. So now I get the class of the JSON object. But now I can't call class get properties because I can't instantiate the class before I know what the properties are. So let's go back to get properties. And I will convert this into a static function. And I will pass in element. So then I can use it this way. Static get properties this. And here static get properties this. And here I can say as well static get properties, and I think I can pass in just a class name as a string. It doesn't have to be an object. And then I will say arguments is an empty array, and then for each of properties as property name, we will say arguments add data property name to the arguments. And then here we can just say ... arguments. So now we get the element class, the name of the class, and then we get the properties that are passed into the constructor function of that class. And then we set an empty arguments array, and we loop through all the properties, and we get the property of the same name from the data class, which is a JSON object. And then we add it into the argument. And why do I get this? Now, I didn't declare a constructor here. Should I declare it as an abstract function? But it can have different amount of arguments. So it's not going to work. Should I use self? I cannot use self. Now, I'm pretty sure this is going to work, but perhaps it is not a good idea to do this. But let's see what will happen. So I will remove all of these from JSON methods from these classes. And this is another thing I have to do. So if it's an array, I have to convert all of the array elements from JSON. So I will take this and I will say value is this. If value is an array, then result will be an empty array, and for each of value as item, we will add to the result item class from JSON item. And we have to get the item class. So item class will be static get element class item. And then value will be result. And then this will be value. And then I can continue to remove all of these. And I have to do this case as well. So if the value is an element, then we have to convert it from JSON. Else if value instance of standard class, then we will do this. Item class will be get element class of value, and value will be item class from JSON value. So that should work. And now here we have a little bit of a different thing, because we are not passing the fields to the form in the constructor. But for now I will fix it this way. I will pass them in the constructor. So I will say protected array fields. And I will default it to an empty array, and I will remove it from here. And then I will add this here. For each of the fields, this add field. But I won't do from JSON, because they should already be form field. Alright, now we have cleaned this up quite a bit. So all the element classes only have a constructor and the getters and then this get element type, which I don't like that much, but let's see if we can figure out a better solution for this. But let's go through all of these. So article block has just constructor and getters and get element type. And banner, constructor, getters, element type. And footer is the same thing. And footer link, well, footer link has its own render method right now. So has the form and the form field. But then header is just this, menu is just this, and menu link has its own render function. And spotlight is just this. Now let's see if this still works. Refresh, it does not work. So let's see what is the problem. Okay, we did not find a class for the Facebook page button. How did I do that? It is a footer link, but now I think I'm just missing the type from that one. Because if you remember in the previous episode, I added these manually in here. So let me change the type. Footer link is type 4. and I will save this here manually and let's refresh. And now we again get this beautiful page here and everything works just as before, but now our code is a lot cleaner. At least I think so. Let me know in the comments what do you think. Were these good improvements? Would you use the reflection class or something else? I don't think the reflection class is such a great idea, but I just wanted to try it out because I've never used the reflection class before, so I think it was pretty interesting. So now I think I will end today's video here because I spent so much time refactoring this project. So in the next one, I promise that we'll make it so that I can edit this page. And I just realized that something weird is going on here. We have two of these forms here. Why do we have two forms? Okay, here's what I did wrong. I don't have to add this for each here to add the fields because the add field method only adds them to the fields. So now if we pass them already, then we add them again. So I don't have to have this here. So now if I refresh this page, now we have just one form. Now let's check that this menu still works. It does not work because I used the wrong placeholders now. So what did I use for that menu? I have title, links, close text. So let's go to the menu and just call it title and links. So now if I refresh this page and I open the menu, now it works. Okay, so now this is the end of today's video. I did not get to make the what you see is what you get editor yet because I spent so much time refactoring this code. But I promise, in the next video, I will do it. So please stay subscribed, or if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe to my channel so you will see the next video where I finish this project. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.